Hi, my name is Lydia Kostopoulos, and I'm a strategy and emerging technologies advisor with a deep passion for body data tracking and human performance. All in the pursuit of feeling great and having as much energy as possible to pursue the things that fill me with joy and purpose. This interview series is about discovering how others have created and are curating their personal healthy aging protocol, one that aligns with their values and the person that they desire to be and become. I hope you find it to be of interest. Let's dive in.
Hi, Dave. Thank you so much for taking the time for me to interview you and interrogate you on your healthy living protocol and your healthy aging protocol. But first, I want you to tell me a little bit about who you are, what you're doing, and what you aspire to be.
Thank you for having me, Lydia. I'm a retired naval officer, 20 plus years of service with surface warfare and then cryptology. Been retired for about 8 years now, and after some struggle with figuring out who it was and what it is I am, I came to the conclusion that I'm a cybersecurity professional who's done a lot of consulting for Fortune 100 companies, and a mental health advocate, mental fitness advocate who wants to share. I want to share my story and make sure that other people don't have to go through it without understanding what can be done to get out of those negative feelings.
And in doing that, you have crafted your own healthy aging kind of philosophy. I see it kind of like a protocol, and it centers around 4 M's. Could you tell us about that? And what are the 4 M's? What inspired you to create that?
Yeah, so 4 M's are movement, mind, meditation, and meaning. And the first 3 really feed off of each other. And then the meaning is the structure, the infrastructure in which those 3 stand. If you don't have meaning and a purpose behind what you're doing, the other 3 kind of fall apart. It really came about, long story short, there was no sitting down with a whiteboard or a piece of paper and saying, this is what I did or what I do. It came about just as a result of talking to an old shipmate about, well, what did you do to help yourself? Well, I started working out again. Wow, that had an amazing impact on my mind. Well, what'd you do for your mind? Well, I had a therapist who called me on my crap, pardon my language, and said, we're going to get through this. We're going to find the right protocol to get you through. And then meditation really came about from a desire to, well, I've always been fascinated with Eastern cultures. And I've always had this perception, which I can go into later, of what meditation was when I was completely wrong. And I found that when I'm not with a therapist, I can rely on meditation to get me through those stressful times, through breathing techniques, through thought mentality, thinking of something in particular that takes me away from the stressor. And then, the meaning is really a reconstruction of Simon Sinek's why. Find your why. What is the reason you get up and do everything for your movement, for your mind, for your meditation, your daily living? You got to have it.
It's almost like the Japanese ikigai, where all of the parts of the things you like, the things you're passionate about, the things you want to do, where everything intersects, and in the middle is that meaning that gives you a lot of joy and purpose. So why don't we start with the mind M? How have you gone about your mind, let's say, performance and healthy aging plan? Like, what were the goals that you had set for yourself? And could you expand on your journey, like on that? Like, what professionals did you seek out? What kind of tools have you tried? What kind of things have you done?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very long, sordid story that began back really in college in a certain extent. I had to deal with being away from home, and then one of our neighbors, who's an older gentleman, committed suicide, and that kind of got me questioning a lot of things. And through the years, I had to identify that I had traumas that I was dealing with, that I was not accepting, that I was not willing to really talk about. So my first introduction to mental health, okay, I went to a counselor, for college, and that was really to get me through that. But really getting into mental health and fitness occurred in 2002. I was having trouble on my ship. I was having trouble in my marriage. I was having trouble with life. But the problem is the Navy says, okay, you've got a problem. We're going to get you fit just enough so we can send you back out to sea, send you back to the field, do your job. But they don't really get to the root cause of the problem and really understanding the details of what drove you to that point. It wasn't until, so I had several episodes through my career in the Navy, and it wasn't until 2018 I met a doc who called me on my stuff and said, I'm going to hold you to task. We're going to find a protocol that works for you. And she tried what's known as eye movement disassociation. I can't remember the R. I don't even know that I got it all right, but EMDR was the first protocol she tried. And it essentially comes down to eye movement to try to get you to disassociate the memory and get to the trauma. And the problem we had was I only took it so far. I have so many walls that are so high, EMDR was not going to break them down. Okay, we tried that for 6-8 months. Then we tried what's known as neurostimulation combined with the vagus nerve reset. And I'll start with the vagus nerve reset first on purpose. So when you go through traumas, your body goes into fight, flight, or freeze mode very quickly. And then normally we come out of it, we go, okay, I responded, got through life, I got through the threat, and I moved on. But if you go through trauma repeatedly, your vagus nerve, which is that nerve that causes the fight, flight, or freeze to activate, you go through it too many times, it stays hypervigilant. It's waiting for the next trauma. It's waiting for the next trigger. So she got me on a protocol to calm that down. At the same time, we go through that for about 20 minutes, and then she would do this neurostimulation. They put little electrodes around your brain, do a map to see where your brain is too fast or too slow in different frequencies, then stimulate along those frequencies in different places to bring you to stasis, to bring you back to a calm state. And I tell you what, I started that the week of Martin Luther King week of 2020, just as COVID was about to hit. We'd heard some rumblings of it, but it was really not quite here. And that day, bam, people noticed a difference. People said something is different about Dave, something changed. And it coincided with a dietary change as well, but that comes under the movement piece that we can talk about as well. I found that, talk therapy, I'm not going to take anything away from talk therapy. It does its job for the right people. But a lot of people go into talk therapy and say, well, it didn't work, so I'm just going to give up. And I think it's incumbent upon anybody going through any kind of mental health issue, whether it's just a minor depression, full-blown depression, schizophrenia, whatever you want to get to, it has its place. But you have to be willing to go beyond the walls.
But what made you so determined? I mean, there's so many people who say, I don't want to dig into that trauma of mine. I don't need to go that far. What made you so persistent about getting on top of your mental health?
When I was in college, I called an admiral that my dad used to work for without telling my dad and asked him for a recommendation. And my dad told me the admiral took him aside later and said, Dave's tenacity will take him far. And it was just a tenacity. It was just life has got to get better than this. Life is...
You wanted more.
I wanted more. And in particular, sitting in this room before it became my office, I sat and thought, this is not the impression I want my daughter to take away. And at the time, she would have been 11. And I said, this is not the life I want her to see. This is not a life I want her to grow up thinking is normal. I'd isolate myself. I'd get angry outbursts. I drank heavily. There's no doubt. I drank more, not to a level that most alcoholics, people would think you're an alcoholic, but at least not in the military. That's another story. And I finally just started realizing something has got to change. And frankly, the final straw on my health journey, not just my mental side, was I hit a weight that I told myself I would never go above. And as soon as I hit that, I was on the phone with an old shipmate, boss of mine, who had gotten on his own health journey for physical health, not mental health. And I said, Bob, I need help. And these were simultaneous with the right therapist. I met, connected with Bob, and we moved forward together.
And this is
Yeah.
part of then the movement of your
Yes.
healthy
Yeah.
aging protocol. So tell us about the movement part and why that you've included that into part of your healthy aging plan. And what were your goals when you started? So you talked about the weight. Did you have other goals besides just getting to a number that made you happy on the scale? And then so what were your goals then? What are your goals now in terms of the movement piece? And what tools are you using? What means, tell us about that.
Yeah. So movement started with my diet. And a lot of people don't make the connection between what you're eating and your mental health. Sugars. We eat a lot of sugars and carbohydrates, which have a negative impact on our mental state, our day-to-day mood. But if the day-to-day mood is in a net negative state, it's going to snowball itself downward. And that leads to depression. In the worst case, a depression when you're in a depression, you have a trigger, an outside external factor that says something negative just catapults it to suicidal ideation sometimes. So the diet changed, and as I lost the weight, and at the same time, again, I'm going through this protocol of neurostimulation, vagus nerve reset, I started to have more positive, I could see a more positive shift. And that drove me to getting back to running, which I used to love a lot through, we'll call it college. And then I had a love-hate relationship with the Navy for 20 years. I did the elliptical a lot, vice the runs for the physical test. And then I just started running. And I go back to snowball effects. Once you start a little bit of something and you see the positive effect on your body and your brain, you want to do more of it. It's that serotonin release.
And you also see kind of the rewards, the fruits of your labor.
Yes. I had more energy. I wasn't winded going upstairs. More time with my daughter and playing with her. I mean, she was 11, 12 years old already, but being at her soccer games. And I decided after I started running, I needed a goal, a meaning, a purpose behind why am I doing all these things. I had my greater purpose of being better for my family, for myself, for my neighbors and all that. But I find that breaking down these bigger goals into little smaller ones, it gives you a more measurable,
in bite-sized chunks to do a little by little.
A measurable track to your end state.
And so I know you used some software and some wearables to kind of get you in the shape to do that. So tell us about that.
I started using a Garmin, which I'm wearing here, and that allowed me to track my sleep, very important factor in mental health, physical health, my steps, my heart rate. I noticed over time my heart rate coming down. This one in particular, the new Garmin I have, tracks my respiration rate, how many breaths per minute I take. And as I got into the movement, I decided I'd go back to 1993 when I first got this idea of running a marathon. And I'd kind of put it off. I'd get excited about it, get injured, or some I hate the word trigger too much, but some trigger would say, you're not good enough, you can't do it. Now you got to deploy. And then I finally just said, I'm going to do this. It's going to happen. So I used the Garmin with another app called Training Peaks, which I don't even understand 90% of it, but I had a coach who was able to tell me, look, your body's wearing down, your heart rate's going up, whatever the statistics were.
And he was able to decode that for you so that you could take action on your own.
Yes. So it helped me tailor my training plan so that if I'm getting, worn down, hey, maybe I don't run 15 miles that weekend, I run 10.
So it's using your body's data to help you inform how you're going to train.
Yep, absolutely. And it finally got me to a point where I could look at things and go, okay, look, I'm not getting the sleep I need. Maybe I need a little bit of a earlier workout or strength training, something other than what I was doing, just to give my legs a break or my body in general as a whole. And it really helped out as I got towards that marathon date last October.
While you had wearables and you had the software and you had the coach, there was also somebody in your life that helped you get to that marathon and get through that, because you had told me that you were thinking about opting out of the marathon last minute. So tell us about that story.
Yeah, so I found that, I mean, if we take anything away from the people around me, it was a community effort to get me to where I am today. It was Bob, my old boss. It was my therapist, and it was Joe, this gentleman who is in his early 60s, but he runs ultra marathons. He runs the Marine Corps Marathon for fun, usually. It's a small race for him. But probably, it must have been September of 2020, he said, hey, you're going to come run with me. I'm like, yeah, right. And so we started training together very slowly. He wouldn't take me out. He just really helped build me up, got me through my first half marathon. Then I started to, okay, I got to try these things on my own. But the marathon was always that one thing I could not get my mind wrapped around. And as you said, I mean, about 2 weeks prior, 10 days, I just wasn't able to run. My body, I had been traveling for work. I was on a ship for a week, which hurt my back and my shoulder/neck. And I just started getting this mental, hey, you're still not good enough, guy. You need to postpone for another year. And Joe took me aside and said, no, you're going to run this thing. I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, I'm about to go through chemo and radiation diet here 2 weeks after we do this because I have a tumor in my neck. Now, mind you, I had not seen Joe for about 6 weeks because of that travel, so I didn't know he had this tumor. And I was just floored that this seemingly healthy guy, ultra marathoner, is telling me he's got cancer. And I said, well, I guess I have no choice. Kind of called me out and said, look, you just got to get through this thing. So we got, now I was nervous as all can be. I did not believe we were going to make it. You know, there's a point in the Marine Corps Marathon where you have to cross the bridge back into Virginia where they take you aside and you don't finish. And I was not sure we were going to make that mark. And that's about the 21 mile mark. And I remember looking at Joe, and I'll keep it clean, and I said, Joe, I feel great. You know, I had not hit the wall at 20. I felt very comfortable running, but I also knew I had him behind me or to my side through 90% of the race to that point, that I knew I could do it. You know, it's a community effort with any of these things, mental health, mental fitness, physical fitness. We try to do things on our own too much. And we, you know, especially coming out of COVID, we were all so isolated. We lost that connection. And I was very fortunate during COVID that I had friends who, I don't want to say threw the caution to the wind, but we understood some of the risks and we went about and stayed healthy through diet, through exercise.
What I love about your story is how that marathon, it really shows that it's not just us, that we are part of a community and that community can help us with our healthy aging goals as well. And, you know, we can have the wearables and all that, but the people around us really influence us very positively.
Yeah.
And so on that note, I want to jump into your meditation part of your 4Ms protocol. So yeah, we did the mind, we did the movement, and now the meditation.
Yeah, meditation, like I said, I've always been fascinated with Eastern philosophies and Eastern cultures. And I started just doing some reading. I think I still have the book behind me by the Dalai Lama on meditation and living happiness. And I started watching a lot of videos, how-tos, why-fors, you know, what the end results can be and how it benefits the body and the mind. And there was one particular video, Gilong Tugten, The Monk's Guide to Happiness. It's like a 45-minute video on YouTube. but he walks you through meditation. Then he takes you through a guided breathing meditation. But that first 30, 40 minutes really dispelled a lot of myths for me on what meditation is. It's not about clearing the mind. The mind is always going to be thinking of something. You tell yourself, don't think of the elephant, an elephant pops in your brain, in your mind. And it's okay to have these extraneous thoughts pop in as long as you calmly don't berate yourself of, God, I just couldn't do it. No, okay, the thought came in, let it go. And it's a process this monk had talked about of being able to release and just let it go. And I found what he teaches is focusing on your breath. Think of a molecule of air coming through your nose, through your throat to your lungs, doing what it does, and then feeling it coming back out. And doing that for a few minutes. I also identified that breathing being important, I started looking at other breathing techniques. And there's one that I forget the name
Wim
of
Hof
it.
method?
It's the Wim Hof, but Wim Hof is really based on another one, and I'm blanking on the name of the Buddhist term for it. But Wim Hof breathing method I found to be very easy to do. You take 30 breaths in, and then on the exhale of the 30th breath, you hold it for as long as you can. And I started out with 10, 15 seconds, 30 seconds. And okay, you breathe in and you hold it for 15 seconds, and then you start the cycle over, and do that as many times as you can. I tell you, the first couple of times I did that, my face was tingling, my arms were numb, but I started to get through it. And I built up to about 6 minutes of that hold.
And how did that feel?
6 minutes. I don't think I could do it today. I've kind of fallen off, but I'm getting back onto the path of the habit. But Wim Hof also, he's known as the Iceman, and he encourages, and one of his 3 philosophies is ice immersion, ice baths, cold showers. So every day now, I finish my morning shower with at least 30 seconds, usually 2 minutes of ice, as cold as ice water as I can get with my shower.
And how does that make you feel? Like,
it's invigorating. It supercharges your body. What's the term I'm looking for? Where you burn calories. Your
metabolic system.
Yeah, your metabolism. It increases your metabolic rate, and you feel that energy for about 4 to 6 hours. And it's very. And I got a couple of my old guys I worked with until earlier this year. I got them into it. And they're like, "Hey, Dave,
to shower cold at the end."
Yeah, and they got into the ice baths, and eventually one of them looked at me and goes, "Hey, why aren't we doing this polar bear plunge?" I'm
like, wow, is that your next adventure?
We did that mid-February, early February this year as a team from the company, and it just the importance of that though to meditation is it's about the mind and just focusing and saying, okay, yeah, I'm gonna get this antsy, this anxiety over how cold I am, and thinking, you take a jump in the water or in the ocean in February, oh my God, hypothermia. No, just calm the body down, and you can last a few minutes. And you also know you're coming out.
That's important.
You're not in the Titanic situation where you're stuck. You're gonna come out. So it just has this hypothermic, exothermic, feeling on the body that just really hyper extends your cardiovascular system that I just find invigorating.
Well, that's a really fascinating meditation kind of system protocol you've got. What about the last M, which is the meaning part?
Yeah, you got, again, like I said earlier, you got to have a purpose. Why are you doing all these things? Why are you getting up in the morning? Why are you going to work? Why are you doing meditation? What's the end result for the movement? For me, it's become getting towards another marathon. I'm doing another one in 7 weeks, getting to a triathlon. Somebody's shot out at me, maybe doing an ultra. Geez, that's a lot bigger that's 4 times bigger than the marathon. But, I've got right here, there's a little card. What is my why? What is
How
my
do you
meaning?
find your why? I mean, I understand the let's have a why, but I think there's a journey in finding it. So like, how did you find it? How do you nurture it after you found it?
It took a lot of reading, discussion. Again, I don't like doing things in isolation anymore, which as someone with post-traumatic stress, I would isolate a lot. And I think, oh, that problem needs to be solved by me. I can't do it as a team. So I read a lot. I watched a lot of videos. I watched Simon Sinek. What's his why? Find your why. I had a coach who pushed me to think bigger than just my why. Okay, my why is to run a marathon. Well, that's going to end at some point. What's your broad endeavor in life? What is it, the legacy kind of thing? And for me, it really came down to setting the best example for my daughter. Mentally, physically, dietarily. Not always the best at it. I like my Halloween candy. It comes out earlier and earlier every year. But setting the example for my family that I can be here emotionally, I can be here physically, and I can set the right example. That really is my meaning.
That's a powerful one.
Yeah, and to do so, I nurture it through my workouts, because I know that if I don't work out, I get grumpy. If I eat too much Halloween candy, I get I get grumpy. I get a little bit tense, because again, the diet and the mind there's a gut-brain connection that is irrefutable now. We've seen the evidence scientifically that what you eat affects your mood, affects your brain, your thinking, your memories. So why feed it junk? Junk occasionally, yes, but not a steady diet of junk. And that goes for TV. That goes for the news. You want to ask what I do to nurture this? I don't watch the news anymore. I don't check a lot of websites for news anymore, because I know that it feeds into a lot of fear and negativity. Professionally, as a cyber professional, as a national security guy, I do check particular sites that I know are giving me facts, but I try to stay away from negative shows.
It sounds like you are very deliberate and aware. So you've got your 4 M's, but it's more than that. You also have a large degree of awareness of how things impact you. So it's not just like, I'm going to move. It's knowing that if you don't work out, you don't feel as great, knowing that if you eat certain things, you don't feel as great. So it's amazing to see how much clarity you have in understanding your body and seeking it out and going after new things as well, in the search of and for the purpose of your meaning. So that's really wonderful. I really appreciate you sharing that. It's a journey though.
Yes. Yeah. It took me 30 plus years to really recognize something isn't right. And even when I knew something wasn't right, it took me that 30 years to say, something can be better. This isn't the norm. People do live their lives in a productive manner. Yes, I was a successful naval officer, successful relative to my aims and goals. Okay, well, what about afterwards? Well, I fumbled for a little while, but it takes the self-reflection, and quite frankly, meditation is another effect is when you calm the mind, it allows you to open to other ideas. You're not thinking about these traumas or these things that are negatively blocking your positive approach.
So you're giving yourself the space to do things that bring you joy and explore other parts of you.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And thank you so much for sharing this and your journey. And I know it's not over because it's a journey, not a destination. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share your 4 M's and your story. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
This series is meant to capture personal stories of individual healthy aging protocols and is for informational purposes only, and it does not constitute providing medical advice or professional services. Those seeking personal medical advice should consult with a licensed healthcare practitioner. If you'd like to find out more about Dave Snell, you can find him on LinkedIn with the same name. And if you'd like to follow more of his journey, you can go to snelladvisory.com. It's spelled SNELLADVISORY.com.